The coffee was still bitter when my world exploded. I'm Jamie Driscoll, and I fix things for a living. Cars, mostly. Engines that won't start, transmissions that slip, radiators that leak, simple problems with simple solutions. If only marriages worked the same way. My wife Vanessa sat across from me at our kitchen table, picking at her scrambled eggs like they'd personally offended her. The morning light streaming through our grimy windows made her look pale, almost ghostly. Our house in Castle Hill, Massachusetts had seen better days, hell, better decades, but it was ours. Or so I thought. "Jamie," she said, not looking up from her plate, "we need to talk." I've been married for 8 years, long enough to know that we need to talk ranks right up there with "it's not you, it's me, and I think we should see other people" in the pantheon of relationship killers. "About what?" I asked, though part of me already knew. The late nights at the real estate office, the new perfume, the way she'd been checking her phone every 5 minutes like she was expecting news that would change her life. She finally looked up. Her green eyes, the ones that had hooked me back in college, were cold as January in New England. "I'm pregnant." I nearly choked on my coffee. That's great, Ness. I mean, we've been trying for..." "It's not yours." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I set down my mug carefully, my hands suddenly steadier than they had any right to be. "Come again?" "It's Pete's." She said it matter-of-factly, like she was discussing the weather. Pete, my older brother. The charming loser who'd been crashing in our guest room for the past 3 months after his latest business venture, selling artisanal firewood, went belly up. I started laughing. Not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly, absurdly impossible. "What's so damn funny?" Vanessa snapped. "Pete had a vasectomy 5 years ago," I said, wiping tears from my eyes. "Remember? You made me drive him to the clinic because he was too scared to go alone. You sat in the waiting room reading People magazine while they snipped him." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The color drained from her face. For just a moment, she looked like a deer caught in headlights. Then her expression hardened. "Well, maybe it didn't work. Maybe you're lying." I stood up, my chair scraping against the linoleum floor. "Maybe you've been screwing around with someone else and figured you'd pin it on Pete because he's convenient. You're being paranoid." "Am I?" "Because last I checked, vasectomies are pretty damn effective. And Pete's been broke for months. When exactly did you two find time for your romantic rendezvous? Between his unemployment interviews and his afternoon naps on my couch?" She stood too, her face flushed with anger. "You don't know everything, Jamie. You think you're so smart with your little garage and your beer buddies, but you don't see what's right in front of you. Then enlighten me." But she was already grabbing her purse and keys. "I'm going to work. We'll finish this later." The front door slammed behind her, rattling the windows. I stood alone in my kitchen, staring at her half-eaten eggs, and felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest. She was right about one thing. I didn't see what was right in front of me, but I was about to start looking. The lantern sits on the corner of Main and Elm, a dive bar that's been serving Castle Hill's working class since 1952. The neon sign flickers between open and OP, and the parking lot is more pothole than pavement. It's exactly the kind of place where a man can drink away his troubles and maybe learn a few things he didn't know before. Mags Kowalski has been tending bar there for 15 years. She's got steel gray hair, arms like a longshoreman, and ears like a satellite dish. Nothing happens in Castle Hill without Mags hearing about it eventually. I slid onto my usual stool around 6 that evening, after spending the day pretending to focus on a transmission rebuild while my mind churned through possibilities. "You look like hell warmed over," Mags said, already reaching for the Budweiser tap. "Feel worse than I look." She set the beer in front of me and leaned against the bar, studying my face with those sharp brown eyes. "Woman trouble? Is there any other kind? Your wife been acting strange lately? More than usual, I mean." I took a long pull of beer. "What have you heard?" "Nothing concrete, but she's been in here a few times over the past month. Always with that brother-in-law of hers, Mark Lafferty." Mark Lafferty, Emily's husband. Vanessa's sister had married Castle Hill's golden boy, high school principal, volunteer firefighter, coached Little League on weekends. The kind of guy who probably ironed his underwear and flossed twice a day. "Mark and Vanessa?" I tried to keep my voice neutral. Sitting real close in that corner booth, talking real quiet. Could be innocent, but... Mags shrugged. "In my experience, when married folks meet up without their spouses, it ain't to discuss the weather." My phone buzzed. Text from my buddy Rich Kowalski. Mags's nephew, and the closest thing Castle Hill had to a tech expert. He ran a computer repair shop out of his basement and had a talent for finding information people thought they'd hidden. Meet me at the shop. Found something you need to see. I finished my beer and dropped a 10 on the bar. Thanks, Mags. Jamie? She caught my arm as I turned to go. Whatever you're thinking of doing, be smart about it. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but it's also best served legal. Rich's shop occupied the basement of a Victorian house on Maple Street. The stairs creaked ominously as I descended into what looked like a computer graveyard. Towers and monitors stacked everywhere, cables snaking across the floor like electronic ivy. Rich himself was exactly what you'd expect from a guy who spent his days elbow-deep in motherboards. Thin, pale, with thick glasses and the kind of beard that suggested he'd forgotten to shave for several weeks running. "You're not going to like this," he said without preamble, gesturing to one of his monitors. The screen showed Vanessa's Facebook page. Nothing unusual there. Real estate listings, motivational quotes about success and determination, photos of her morning latte. But Rich had been busy. "I ran a reverse image search on some of her recent photos," he explained. "Look at this one." It was a selfie Vanessa had posted 2 weeks ago. She was in what looked like a hotel room, smiling at the camera. The caption read, "Taking a break from showing houses. Sometimes you need to recharge. Real estate life blessed." "Now look at this," Rich said, enhancing the image. In the background, reflected in the mirror behind Vanessa, was a man's jacket hanging on a chair, and on the dresser, barely visible, was a wedding ring. "Could be anyone's ring," I said, but my voice sounded hollow even to me. "Could be, except I enhanced it further." He clicked to another window, showing an extreme close-up of the ring. It was distinctive, a thick gold band with a Celtic knot pattern. "Remember Mark Lafferty's wedding ring? I grabbed this shot from Emily's Instagram last month." The rings were identical. "There's more," Rich continued. "I checked the metadata on the photo. It was taken at the Riverside Inn, out on Route 9. Not exactly where you'd expect a real estate agent to be, or recharging in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon." I stared at the screen, feeling pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. "Can you print these?" "Already done." He handed me a manila folder. "Jamie, what are you going to do with this?" "I'm going to find out exactly how deep this rabbit hole goes. My workshop sits behind our house, a converted 2-car garage that I've filled with tools, spare parts, and the accumulated debris of 20 years in the auto repair business. It's my sanctuary, the place where I go to think and work with my hands when my brain needs a break. It's also, apparently, where my wife goes to screw around. I'd installed the security cameras 6 months ago after someone broke into the garage and stole my good socket set. 4 cameras, motion-activated, with night vision and audio recording. The footage gets stored on a hard drive in my office, automatically overwriting itself every 30 days. I'd never bothered to check the recordings. Until now. It took me 3 hours to go through the past month's worth of footage. Most of it was exactly what you'd expect. Me working on cars, the occasional raccoon, delivery trucks backing into the driveway. But there were other visitors, too. The first recording I found was from 2 weeks ago. Vanessa's car pulling into the driveway at 2:30 p.m. on a Wednesday. She wasn't alone. Mark Lafferty climbed out of the passenger seat, looking around nervously before following Vanessa into the garage. They were in there for 47 minutes. When they came out, Mark's hair was mussed and Vanessa was adjusting her blouse. The audio was even more damning. "This is insane," Mark's voice tight with stress. "If Emily finds out—" "Emily won't find out," Vanessa interrupted. "And neither will Jamie. He's too stupid to put 2 and 2 together. I don't like lying to him. He's a good guy. He's a loser who fixes cars for a living. I deserve better than this." There was a pause, then the sound of kissing. "We both do. What about Pete? You can't seriously be planning to—" "Pete will do what I tell him to do. He owes me." "Owes you for what?" "That doesn't concern you. Just trust me, I have it handled." I sat back in my desk chair, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. It was one thing to suspect your wife was cheating. It was another to hear her call you a loser while she planned to frame your own brother for her pregnancy. But what did Pete owe her? And why would he go along with such an obvious lie? I found my answer in the next recording, dated 3 days later. This time it was just Vanessa and Pete, and my brother looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole and die. "I can't do this, Ness. It's not right." "You don't have a choice." Her voice was ice cold. "Unless you want everyone to know about the money." "That was a mistake. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking." "You stole $1,500 from your brother's emergency fund, from the coffee can he keeps in his bedroom closet. The same coffee can he's been putting money into for 3 years, saving up to surprise me with a trip to Ireland for our anniversary. My blood turned to liquid nitrogen. That money. I'd been saving it for months, $20 and $50 at a time, whenever I had a little extra from a good week at the shop. I'd checked the can 2 weeks ago and found it empty. Pete had sworn he didn't know anything about it. "I'll pay him back," Pete said, his voice breaking. "I'll get a job. With what skills? You're 38 years old and you've never held a steady job in your life. Face it, Pete. You're a loser, just like your brother. The only difference is I can use you." "What if he figures out the vasectomy thing?" "He won't, and even if he does, you'll stick to the story. You'll tell him the procedure failed or that you lied about getting it in the first place. Whatever it takes." "And if I don't?" "Then I tell Jamie about the money, and Emily and anyone else who'll listen. How's that going to look? The town drunk stealing from his own brother?" There was a long silence, then Pete's defeated voice. "What do you want me to do?" I stopped the recording and sat in the dark garage, my hands shaking with rage. Not just at Vanessa's betrayal, but at the systematic way she'd manipulated everyone around her. Pete wasn't innocent, stealing from me was unforgivable, but he was as much a victim as I was. The difference was, I wasn't going to stay a victim. I copied the audio files to a flash drive and called Rich. "I need another favor," I said when he answered. "What kind of favor?" "The kind that's going to make Thanksgiving very interesting this year." Pete's cabin sits on the shore of Miller's Pond, about 10 miles outside Castle Hill. It's a ramshackle place that our grandfather left him, 1 bedroom, a kitchen that doubles as a living room, and a dock that's held together more by hope than by nails. Pete had been staying there off and on for years, whenever he needed to find himself, or get his head straight, or whatever euphemism he was using for avoiding responsibility. I drove out there on Thursday evening, after Vanessa had left for what she claimed was a late showing. The gravel driveway crunched under my tires as I pulled up next to Pete's rusted Chevy pickup. He was sitting on the front porch, drinking beer and staring out at the water. He looked up when I got out of my car, and I could see the guilt written all over his face. "Hey, Jamie, what brings you out here? We need to talk." He gestured to the empty chair beside him. "Want a beer?" "I want the truth." Pete took a long swig from his bottle, not meeting my eyes. "About what?" "About the $1,500, about Vanessa, about the vasectomy you had 5 years ago." He went very still. "I don't know what you're talking about." I pulled out my phone and played the garage recording. Vanessa's voice filled the evening air. "You stole $1,500 from your brother's emergency fund." Pete's face went white. "Where did you get that?" "Security cameras. Amazing what technology can do these days." I sat down in the other chair, keeping my voice conversational. "So here's what I know. You stole my money. Vanessa's blackmailing you to claim paternity of her baby. And the baby's real father is Mark Lafferty." "Jamie, The question is, what are we going to do about it?" Pete set down his beer with shaking hands. "She'll destroy me if I don't go along with it. She'll tell everyone about the money." "She's going to destroy you anyway. You think she's going to let you live happily ever after as the father of her bastard child? She's using you, Pete. Once she doesn't need you anymore, you'll be yesterday's garbage." "So what do you want me to do?" "I want you to grow a spine. I want you to tell the truth. And then what? Emily finds out her husband's been cheating. Your marriage falls apart. The whole family explodes." "The family's already exploded. We're just cleaning up the pieces." Before Pete could respond, headlights swept across the cabin. A car door slammed, and Mark Lafferty came jogging up the driveway, looking panicked. Pete, are you—" He stopped short when he saw me. "Jamie, what are you doing here?" "Having a conversation with my brother. What are you doing here?" Mark glanced between Pete and me, clearly trying to figure out how much I knew. "Vanessa called me. She said you were acting strange, asking questions. She was worried you might do something stupid." "Stupid like what? Like finding out my wife's been screwing her brother-in-law?" Mark's face went through several interesting color changes. "I don't know what you think you know. I know about the Riverside Inn, I know about the garage, I know about the baby." I stood up, and Mark took a step back. "What I don't know is why you thought you could get away with it. It's not what you think." "Really? Then explain it to me." Mark looked around desperately, like he was hoping for divine intervention. When none came, he tried a different approach. "Look, Jamie, I'm sorry. It just happened. Vanessa and I, we connected, and—" "You connected? That's what we're calling it?" "We never meant for it to go this far. The pregnancy was an accident. But framing Pete wasn't." Mark's shoulders sagged. "That was Vanessa's idea. She said it would be easier, cleaner. No one would get hurt, except Pete, and me, and your wife. Emily doesn't have to know. We can work this out, keep it in the family. I started laughing, the same bitter sound I'd made at the breakfast table. Keep it in the family? You knocked up my wife and tried to pin it on my brother, and you want to keep it in the family? Mark was backing toward his car now, his face pale in the porch light. I should go. We can talk about this later, when everyone's calmed down. No, I said, stepping off the porch. We're going to talk about this now. What happened next wasn't planned. Mark turned to run, tripped over a loose board on the dock, and went sprawling into the shallow water near the shore. He came up sputtering, covered in pond weeds and mud, looking about as dignified as a drowned rat. Pete started laughing despite himself. Smooth, Mark. Real smooth. I walked to the edge of the dock and looked down at Castle Hill's golden boy, sitting waist-deep in Miller's pond with a lily pad stuck to his forehead. Here's how this is going to work, I said. You're going to call Vanessa and tell her the game's over. Then you're going to go home to your wife and figure out how to explain why you smell like pond scum. And Pete, I turned to my brother. You're going to call Vanessa too. You're going to tell her that you're not playing along anymore. And if we don't? Mark asked, trying to maintain some shred of authority while sitting in a swamp. Then everyone in town gets to hear those garage recordings. And I mean everyone. Your boss, your neighbors, the parents of the kids you teach. How's that going to look on your performance review? Mark climbed out of the water, dripping and defeated. You're making a mistake, Jamie. Vanessa won't just roll over and take this. I'm counting on it. Emily Lafferty's house is everything mine isn't. Spotless, tastefully decorated, and filled with the kind of furniture that comes with care instructions. She's been hosting family Thanksgiving for the past 5 years, ever since our parents moved to Florida, and she takes the responsibility seriously. Too seriously, according to Vanessa, who'd spent the past week complaining about Emily's control freak tendencies and her insistence on cloth napkins and matching serving dishes. I arrived at exactly 4 o'clock, carrying a bottle of wine and a manila folder that was going to change everything. Vanessa had ridden over with Emily earlier to help with the cooking, which meant she'd had plenty of time to spin whatever story she thought would work best. The house smelled like turkey and stuffing and the particular brand of tension that comes with family gatherings. Emily met me at the door, looking frazzled but determined. Jamie, come in, come in. How are you holding up? Holding up? She lowered her voice, glancing toward the kitchen where I could hear Vanessa's laugh. Vanessa told me about the situation with Pete. I'm so sorry. So that was the story she was going with. Poor Vanessa, knocked up by her husband's loser brother. Poor Jamie, the cuckolded husband who didn't even know his own brother was stealing his wife. Where is Pete anyway? I asked. He called this morning. Said he wasn't feeling well. Emily's expression was carefully neutral, but I could see the disapproval in her eyes. Probably for the best, under the circumstances. Mark appeared from the living room, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the past week. He'd cleaned up since his impromptu swim in Miller's Pond, but there were dark circles under his eyes and a nervous tick in his left cheek. Jamie, he said, extending his hand. Good to see you. I shook it, noting how his palm was sweaty despite the cool weather. Mark, how's the water these days? He went pale, but before he could respond, Vanessa emerged from the kitchen. She'd dressed carefully for the occasion, conservative black dress, minimal makeup, the picture of a wronged woman bearing her burden with dignity. Hello, Jamie. Her voice was cool, professional. I wasn't sure you'd come. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Emily clapped her hands together with forced cheer. Well, now that we're all here, shall we sit down? The turkey's ready, and I made that stuffing recipe Mom used to make. The dining room table was set for 5, with Emily's good china and crystal glasses that probably cost more than I made in a week. I took my usual seat across from Vanessa, with Mark and Emily flanking us like referees at a boxing match. Emily said grace, thanking God for family and forgiveness and second chances. I kept my eyes open, watching Vanessa's face as she bowed her head in mock piety. Mark looked like he was about to throw up. For the first 20 minutes, we managed to maintain the illusion of a normal family dinner. Emily talked about her job at the bank, I made small talk about the garage, and Vanessa played the role of the stoic pregnant woman facing an uncertain future. Then Emily brought up the elephant in the room. Jamie, I want you to know that whatever happens, you'll always be family to us. This thing with Pete, it doesn't change anything. That's very generous of you, Emily. I just can't believe he would do something like this. I mean, I know Pete's had his problems, but to betray his own brother... Vanessa dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. I feel terrible about it. I never meant for things to go so far. Pete can be very persuasive. Persuasive, I repeated. That's an interesting word choice. Mark was cutting his turkey into smaller and smaller pieces, not eating any of it. Maybe we should talk about something else. No, Emily said firmly. This needs to be discussed. We're family, and families face problems together. She turned to Vanessa. Have you thought about what you're going to do? About the baby? I'm going to keep it, of course, and I'm going to raise it right, even if I have to do it alone. You won't be alone, Emily assured her. Mark and I will help however we can, won't we, Mark? Mark made a strangled noise that might have been agreement. I reached for the manila folder I'd placed beside my chair. Actually, I brought something that might interest everyone. Call it a Thanksgiving surprise. Jamie, Vanessa said sharply, this isn't the time. No, I think it's exactly the time. I opened the folder and pulled out the first photograph, the enhanced image of Mark's wedding ring reflected in the hotel room mirror. Emily, you might recognize this ring. Emily took the photo, her face puzzled. This looks like... Mark, isn't this your... Where did you get this? Mark's voice was barely above a whisper. From Vanessa's Facebook page. Amazing what you can see when you know how to look. I pulled out the next item, a transcript of the garage recording. This one's even better. It's a conversation between your wife and my wife, recorded in my garage 2 weeks ago. I began to read aloud. Mark's voice. This is insane. If Emily finds out... Vanessa's voice. Emily won't find out, and neither will Jamie. He's too stupid to put 2 and 2 together. The silence that followed was deafening. Emily's face had gone white, and she was staring at the transcript like it was written in a foreign language. That's not... You can't... Mark started, then gave up. Vanessa tried a different approach. Those recordings are illegal. You can't use them. Actually, I can. Massachusetts is a one-party consent state. As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, it's perfectly legal. And since it happened in my garage, on my property, I shrugged. Well, let's just say I had every right to know what was going on. Emily was reading the transcript now, her lips moving silently as she processed the words. When she got to the part where Vanessa called me a loser, her expression hardened. This is real? She asked quietly. Every word. She turned to Mark, who was staring at his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. Mark, is this real? He looked up at her with the expression of a man watching his life collapse in real time. Emily, I can explain. Explain what? That you've been screwing my sister? That you got her pregnant? That you were planning to let Pete take the blame? It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Emily stood up so fast her chair fell backward. How was it supposed to happen, Mark? What was the plan? Keep screwing her on the side while I played the supportive sister? Raise your bastard child as my nephew? Emily, please. But Emily was beyond listening. She turned to Vanessa, who was sitting frozen in her chair. And you, my own sister. How long has this been going on? It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think, Emily's voice cracked like a whip. You've been lying to everyone, manipulating everyone. Poor Pete, poor Jamie, poor stupid Emily who never saw what was right in front of her face. I pulled out the final item from my folder, a copy of Pete's medical records, obtained through some creative research by Rich. For what it's worth, Emily, Pete really did have a vasectomy 5 years ago. The procedure was successful. There's no way he could be the father of Vanessa's baby. Emily looked at the medical records, then at Mark, then at Vanessa. Get out. Emily, Mark started. Both of you, get out of my house, now. Vanessa finally found her voice. You can't throw me out. I'm your sister. You were my sister. Now you're just another cheating whore who stabbed me in the back. The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun. Vanessa's carefully constructed facade finally cracked, and I saw the real person underneath. Cold, calculating, and absolutely furious at being exposed. You self-righteous bitch, she snarled. You think you're so perfect with your perfect house and your perfect marriage. Well, your perfect husband came crawling to me, begging for what you couldn't give him. What I couldn't give him? Emily laughed bitterly. What, you mean honesty, loyalty, self-respect? Mark was backing toward the door, clearly hoping to escape before things got worse. But I wasn't done with him yet. Mark, I called out. Before you go, there's one more thing. I pulled out my phone and played another recording, this one from the night at the cabin. I want Emily to hear what you said about keeping it in the family. Mark's voice filled the room. Emily doesn't have to know. We can work this out, keep it in the family. Emily turned to look at her husband with an expression of pure disgust. Keep it in the family. My God, Mark, what kind of man are you? I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. Sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught? He didn't answer, which was an answer in itself. Emily walked to the front door and held it open. Get out, both of you, and don't come back. Vanessa stood up, her face twisted with rage. This isn't over, Jamie. You think you're so smart, but you have no idea what you've just done. I know exactly what I've done, I replied. I've told the truth. She stormed out, with Mark trailing behind her like a whipped dog. Emily slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. We stood in the sudden silence, surrounded by the ruins of Thanksgiving dinner and what used to be our family. I'm sorry, Emily, I said finally. I know this isn't how you wanted to find out. She turned to me, and I was surprised to see that she wasn't crying. Instead, she looked relieved, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Don't apologize, she said. Thank you for telling me the truth. I should have seen it myself. How could you? They were careful. Were they, or was I just willfully blind? She walked back to the dining room and began clearing the table. I think I knew, deep down. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the way Mark had been acting. I just didn't want to face it. I helped her stack the plates, feeling oddly peaceful despite the chaos of the past hour. What are you going to do now? Divorce him, kick him out, start over. She paused, holding a serving dish full of untouched stuffing. What about you? Same, I guess. It won't be easy. No, I agreed. But it'll be honest. Emily smiled for the first time all evening. You know what? I think I prefer honest. The divorce papers were filed on Monday. By Wednesday, half the town knew about the Thanksgiving explosion, and by Friday, the other half had heard 3 different versions of the story. Castle Hill loves its gossip, and a scandal involving the high school principal, a real estate agent, and a stolen pregnancy was premium entertainment. I was changing the oil in Mrs. Patterson's Honda when Rich showed up at the garage, grinning like the cat that ate the canary. You need to see this, he said, holding up his tablet. The screen showed Vanessa's real estate company website. Her professional headshot and bio had been removed, replaced by a generic Contact Us message. They fired her? I asked. This morning. Apparently some of her clients heard about the affair and started asking uncomfortable questions. The company decided she was a liability. I felt a brief flicker of something that might have been sympathy. Vanessa might be a cheating, manipulative liar, but losing her job was a serious blow. Real estate was all she knew, and her reputation in Castle Hill was now thoroughly shot. The sympathy lasted about 3 seconds. What about Mark? Still employed, but barely. The school board called an emergency meeting yesterday. Parents are demanding his resignation. Will they fire him? Rich shrugged. Hard to say. Adultery isn't technically grounds for dismissal, but the scandal isn't exactly great for the school's image. My guess is they'll make his life miserable until he quits. I finished with Mrs. Patterson's car and wiped my hands on a shop rag. Any word from Pete? He's still at the cabin. My mag says he came into the Lantern Tuesday night, apologized to everyone within earshot, and promised to pay you back for the money. With what job? That's what everyone asked. I was about to respond when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at Miller's Pond. Come alone. V. Rich read the message over my shoulder. You're not actually going, are you? Why wouldn't I? Because your soon-to-be ex-wife is probably homicidal right now? Because isolated locations and angry people don't mix well? Because you watch too many movies? I grabbed my jacket from the hook by the door. She's not going to kill me, Rich. She's too smart for that. Famous last words. If I'm not back in 2 hours, call the cops. I'm calling them now. Don't. I want to hear what she has to say. The drive to Miller's Pond took 15 minutes, during which I had plenty of time to wonder if Rich was right about this being a spectacularly bad idea. But curiosity won out over common sense, as it usually does. Vanessa's car was parked next to Pete's cabin, but I didn't see her anywhere. I got out and called her name. Over here. She was sitting on the dock, her legs dangling in the water. She'd traded her usual business attire for jeans and a sweater, and her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked younger somehow, more like the college girl I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. You came, she said without turning around. You asked me to. I wasn't sure you would, after everything. I walked out onto the dock and sat down beside her, leaving a careful distance between us. What do you want, Vanessa? To apologize. That wasn't what I'd expected. Okay. I know it doesn't change anything. I know sorry doesn't fix what I broke. But I needed to say it. We sat in silence for a while, watching the late afternoon sun reflect off the water. A fish jumped somewhere out in the middle of the pond, sending ripples across the surface. "Why, Mark?" I asked finally. She was quiet for so long I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then, "He paid attention to me? I paid attention to you." "No, you didn't. Not really. When was the last time we had a conversation that wasn't about bills or chores or whose turn it was to take out the garbage?" I started to protest, then stopped. She was right, and we both knew it. "When was the last time you told me I was beautiful?" She continued. "When was the last time you surprised me with flowers, or took me somewhere special, or made me feel like I was more than just the person who did your laundry?" "So this is my fault?" "No." She turned to look at me for the first time since I'd arrived. "It's mine. I could have talked to you. I could have told you how I was feeling. I could have tried to fix things instead of looking for someone else to make me feel better. But you didn't." "But I didn't." Another silence. A loon called from somewhere across the pond, its voice echoing off the water. "I lost my job," she said. "I heard." "Mark's probably going to lose his too. Emily filed for divorce yesterday." "I know." "Pete's been calling me. He wants to know if I'm going to press charges about the money." "Are you?" She shook her head. "What's the point? He doesn't have anything to take. He's going to pay me back." "How?" "I don't know, but he will." Vanessa pulled her feet out of the water and hugged her knees to her chest. "I'm leaving Castle Hill." "Where will you go?" "My cousin lives in Portland. She says I can stay with her until I figure things out. Start over somewhere? Nobody knows my story." "What about the baby?" "What about it?" "It's still Mark's child. He has rights." She laughed bitterly. "Mark doesn't want rights. He wants this whole thing to disappear. He's already talking about signing away parental rights if I agree to keep quiet about the affair." "Will you?" "I don't know. Maybe." "What difference does it make now? Everyone already knows." The sun was getting lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Soon it would be dark, and the pond would be just another shadow in the New England woods. "I really am sorry, Jamie," Vanessa said. "I know that doesn't mean much, but it's true." "I know." Do you think we could have made it work, if things had been different?" I considered the question, really considered it. "Maybe, if we'd both tried harder, if we'd talked more, if we'd remembered why we fell in love in the first place. But we didn't. No, we didn't." She stood up, brushing off her jeans. "I should go. I'm driving to Portland tonight." "Tonight? No point in staying. My lease is up at the end of the month anyway, and there's nothing keeping me here." I stood too, suddenly aware that this was probably the last conversation we'd ever have. "Vanessa?" "Yeah?" "For what it's worth, I hope you find what you're looking for." She smiled sadly. "Thanks. I hope you do too." She walked back toward her car, then stopped and turned around. "Jamie, take care of Pete, okay? He's not a bad person. He's just lost." "I know." "And don't let this make you bitter. You deserve better than that." I watched her drive away, her taillights disappearing around the bend in the road. Then I sat back down on the dock and called Rich. "Still alive, I see," he said when he answered. "Still alive. How'd it go?" She apologized. "She's leaving town tonight." "Good riddance." "Yeah, maybe. You okay?" I looked out at the pond, now dark as black coffee in the fading light. "I will be." Spring came early to Castle Hill that year. By March, the snow had melted, and the first crocuses were pushing up through the thawed ground. I was working in my garden, something I'd never had time for when I was married, when Emily stopped by. "Thought you might want to see this," she said, handing me a newspaper clipping. It was from the Portland Press-Herald, a small item in the business section. Vanessa had gotten a job with a real estate company in South Portland. The article mentioned her extensive experience in the Massachusetts market and her commitment to providing excellent service to her new Maine clients. "Good for her," I said, and meant it. "How are you doing?" Emily asked. "Really?" "Better. Different, but better." She looked around the garden, taking in the neat rows of tomato plants and the freshly mulched flower beds. "This looks good." "Therapy," I said. "Turns out I like growing things." Emily had changed too over the past 6 months. The divorce had been finalized in February, and she'd traded her banker's wardrobe for jeans and sweaters. She'd started taking art classes and had let her hair grow out. She looked happier than I'd seen her in years. "Any word from Pete?" she asked. "He got a job at the lumber yard in Millerville. Steady work, decent pay. He's been making payments on the money he stole." "That's good." "Yeah, it is." We stood in comfortable silence, watching a robin hunt for worms in the freshly turned soil. "Emily?" "Yeah?" Thank you. For Thanksgiving, I mean. For not shooting the messenger. She smiled. Thank you for being the messenger. I needed to know the truth. Even though it hurt? Especially because it hurt. The truth isn't always comfortable, but it's always better than living a lie. After she left, I went back to my gardening. The sun was warm on my back, and the soil was rich and dark between my fingers. In a few months, these seeds would grow into something beautiful and useful. It wasn't a perfect metaphor for starting over, but it was close enough. My phone buzzed with a text from Rich. Beer at the Lantern tonight? Mag says she's got gossip about the new principal. I typed back, sure, but I'm buying the first round. Why? Because I'm grateful. For what? I looked around my garden, at my house, at the life I was building from the ruins of my marriage. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was honest. It was mine. For the truth, I typed, even when it hurt. The end, don't forget to hit, like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.